Hello. Welcome. Proof
Yeah.
Beyond Reason, episode number 25.
It's crazy, 25.
Very excited about number 25. Quick shout out to a local artist we have here in Orlando. His name is Soulja. He has a website called Soulja I Am. So that's SOULJAIAM.com. He puts out a lot of quality music. He has, I've been to a couple of his events, and great stage presence. Really young guy, does his thing. So check him out, SouljaIam.com. Download his music, purchase, donate. If he's in concert, check him out. But he's someone to look out for, up-and-comer. G, what's the status on your book? I haven't got the link yet. How come you haven't sent me the link?
You haven't asked for the link, first of all, but I shall send everyone. Just make sure you give me your email.
Please.
And I shall send you the link. No, I should send you the whole ebook. How about that?
Yeah. I'll take the ebook.
I'll take the ebook.
If you want a link to G's book, email us, proofbeyondreason@gmail.com.
Yep.
And he'll send you a link so you can purchase it. It's not free, ladies and gentlemen, but it is a book that I want to read, so I want to check it out.
Check out the blog as well, geologyblog.com.
So here we got our guest again, came back for the second time. That means the first time wasn't a bad experience.
Woo.
We got John here, so we're trying to figure out his stage name. So, you know, if you guys want to suggest a stage name, we're kind of like in the same boat we were with Ivan. Ivan was a little bit on the fence. I said J-Mo. You know, it just makes sense for me. But if you don't like J-Mo, let us know. But my thought is we stick with J-Mo.
So what happens if I don't like J-Mo?
If you don't like J-Mo, then we just call him John. He's boring old John.
Yeah.
Boring old John. That'll be his name. But thank you for coming back.
Yeah, no
Hopefully,
problem.
we have John here as a regular on the show and covering topics that we have to discuss. So let's jump right in. We're on Facebook Live right now. We just put out episode number 24 on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube.
Yep.
So check us out there. But today's episode, we are talking about chaos. So chaos is exactly that. It's what I'm seeing in the culture. But there's so much to it. There's so many layers to chaos. And one of the things when I was thinking about the topic and just thinking about how our culture, how our world is kind of evolving now that we have the internet. We've had the internet for years, but now it's becoming a global thing. The globalization of commerce, of relationships, of social media, and so forth, it really has caused this weird dynamic that we're seeing, in the world. And I listed a few things, that I've analyzed, and part of what I do for my job, and we've got so much chaos. We have so many crisis moments because now we have the ability to expose them. We have camera phones so we can record and see that there's a crisis moment or there's issues going on. But you have things like human trafficking. Now the exposure of human trafficking, there's a lot of research out there that we have more human trafficking today than we've ever had in all of human history. So we talk about slaves and slaves from Africa, slaves from Ireland, slaves from wherever. Human trafficking, slavery, forced labor, sex slavery is higher than it's ever been.
Closest to us, Tampa. Tampa's like number 1 in the world.
Really? I didn't
Human
know.
trafficking.
Well, Orlando, UCF, is one of the top schools for those services, like sex trafficking services.
Wow.
Students just volunteering themselves so that they can pay for college.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Opioid crisis. So painkillers. There's a significant amount of overdose. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying every year because people are addicted to these painkillers. They're addicted to these methadone? No, not methadone.
It's like it depends on the painkiller.
Right.
Does some have like an naproxen or like it's more of a codeine?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah. And so it gives you that relaxing feeling, and people have been just overdosing. It's literally a crisis in the U.S. costing hospitals, because of labor force and millions and millions of dollars. Like cities are losing millions and millions of dollars because people are overdosing on these drugs. It's insane. Just read off a few healthcare staffing crises. So there's a shortage of healthcare professionals in order to help accommodate for the demand that there is for healthcare throughout the world. STDs are on the rise, continued on the rise. So the CDC, according to the CDC, millions more cases than there ever have been. Syphilis, chlamydia, just in the millions, just climbing every year, and it's not stopping.
What's crazy is because when we were younger, like in the early 90s, they had this outbreak of AIDS, but you don't really hear about that, right? You don't hear about so much. Like
You don't, because I think the AIDS epidemic, it's maybe controlled, but there's other ways to get other STDs. So STDs are, through the roof, and AIDS is present. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I don't hear the media exposure of AIDS as much in this country anyway. At least where we are. Hollywood rape allegations.
Oh yeah.
So
that's a huge
it's
one.
chaotic. Yo, I literally directors. Some of the most famous directors of movies we've seen, just eight cases open for rape allegations. It's insane.
I mean, it's not anything new. I think we just live in a society where everybody has a camera phone and everybody is willing to speak about certain things, but society, I don't think, has changed.
That's the thing. The chaos is rising to the top. So if it was hidden for a while, now it's rising to the
Now
top so people
everything's
can
coming
see
to
it.
light.
Yeah, so it's being exposed. Abortions, rampant abortions across the board. The availability for abortions, the debate between is it life, is it not life, is just more and more evidence now. Scientists are tackling it even deeper. Before it was kind of just, okay, no, this is what we say. Now it's being forced. The issue is being forced to get researched. And now they're starting to say, well, you know what? We were wrong in these areas. We're starting to side with the reality of what we've always talked about as far as what life is and when life begins. But the topic is becoming chaotic. People are fighting. People they're stopping friendships over this topic. That's how chaotic the topic has become. Racism, we're seeing that in the media, crazy.
Like daily.
Yeah,
Daily.
it's just all you see, just cops and between people groups and whatever, and Trump and whatever's happening there. Suicides, chaotic. Suicides have grown 24% since 1999. So between 1999 and 2014, 24% of an increase in suicides.
Wow.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's
Chaotic,
crazy.
right? So for you to want to take your life, it is your worldview. It is something you're being exposed to. But that type of increase, it's a chaotic moment. It's causing chaos with people, because when suicides happen, it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone else, right? Diagnosed mental illnesses on the rise. Just everyone has a mental illness. Everybody's on medication. That's just what it is. For one reason or another, everyone
suffers from depression now.
Everyone suffers from depression, anxiety. Everyone suffers from bipolar. It's happening, and many cases are legit. Many cases are not legit. But our culture might be creating an environment where this is why people are suffering, because work is insane, and our bills and our family and the news and all this worry and whatever's going on. Imprisonments, murders, the drug revolution, pornography, $1 billion industry, chaotic. The how much has just impacted our culture, all the different worldviews, and on and on and on and on and on. So there's a lot of different areas that we can explore when it comes to chaos. And you were talking about something interesting. You had a good conversation today.
Yeah. Well, I started thinking about what is chaos, and chaos is like basically just disorder, right? And I have just a basic definition. Basically, it says complete disorder. So it's kind of interesting to me the way that the dictionary kind of describes it. But it says complete disorder and confusion. And then if you think about the antonym to that, it's order, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I start thinking about, man, like, what is order if it's the complete opposite of chaos? And so it gives me two definitions.
One for chaos, one for order, or this one's for order?
No, the order gives me two
Got it.
definitions. And then the first one is an authoritative command, and we know that, like if you have a
Mm.
child or
Mhm.
something, hey, go give me a glass of water or something like that, right?
Go get the remote.
Yeah, go, hey, hey, no, okay, no, but and then the other one would be an arrangement according to a particular sequence. So
Mm.
that's kind of like where we get, if I'm going to put something in order, like a bookshelf
Mhm.
or something
Mhm.
like that. And I started thinking about this. I'm like, wow, man, like two things when I read the scriptures and when I read the Bible, it describes like God in Genesis speaking life into existence. That covers one of the things of order. And then
Mm.
the second thing of order is that he puts everything into a sequence of events. Like everything is perfected.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So he not only speaks a command, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, wow, man, this is blowing my mind with just the way that God organizes it. And then also different things like that, and kind of like how people see order and chaos.
Mm.
You know what I mean? We clearly live in a society that has chaos and stuff like that, but like, do people necessarily think chaos is bad? You know what I mean? So
But you had a conversation earlier, and you spoke to somebody. You asked them that question. You asked them about chaos. What was the reply?
well, it was basically there's two forms of chaos. Like from chaos comes order, right? Or does order come chaos? And the response I got was, chaos comes from order, but there's not a right or wrong answer. But
In certain circumstances.
in certain
though.
circumstances, yes. But I think it just depends on the worldview of the people.
Mm.
So, like, if I come from a biblical standpoint, I have to believe that God is the one that puts everything into order, right?
Mhm.
But it seems like the opposite is true, right? Like with society, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's not anything bad, but at the same time, it's like it's the reality of life, and it kind of resembles to me a quote, and I'm going to give it to you. Friedrich Nietzsche.
Mm.
He
Atheist.
Well, he has two quotes. One of them, he says, "God is dead," right? And then the other quote that he has, "Out of chaos comes order," which is interesting to me because when I started thinking about like different things of science, I remember when I was younger, my science teacher talking about the law of thermodynamics. And
Shout
I'm
out
like,
to Mr. Jones.
yeah, and one of the things that always grasped me was like that he was saying that like there's multiple laws of thermodynamics. One of
Right.
them is that you can't create energy, right? And thermodynamics is like heat transference, right? Or multiple things. It's not just that, right? But the second law of thermodynamics is basically for the like entropy is basically a word that people are using now. And entropy is that things go. It basically means disorder, and so things go from an order state
order, right.
to a disorder state.
Right.
And that is a fundamental law. It's not a theory.
So
So-
things are getting worse. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
second,
in
second
that-
law means things are getting worse. Things were in a
Yes.
proper order, in a proper way, and now as time progresses,
Yes.
it just gets progressively worse.
It gets worse. It gravitates towards, and you can see it. You can see it in your child. You can see it in your own room or your car, right? Was the last time you washed your car? Or have you ever
I don't
driven?
remember.
Like I don't know about you, but like whenever you drive a car that's like completely clean, you drive different, don't you? It's like
Absolutely.
amazing.
You get an oil change.
But
clean
what
your car.
happens that same day? A bug hits it. This world is the law, of
Yeah.
entropy, or basically the law of the thermodynamics. Not even that, just that, but it gravitates towards it.
That's interesting. So life itself. So if we talk about from the biblical context, from the creation standpoint, the world started with an intelligent designer. He is the beginning. In the beginning, God. So the intelligent designer was the one who created order in the universe so that the universe could be formed, and we have laws that are in place from a scientific standpoint in order for things to operate the way they do. If we're an inch to the left, inch to the right, we fry, we freeze, whatever, right? In the naturalist standpoint, it's chaos.
It starts from chaos.
It
So
starts
you have
from
the Big
chaos.
Bang.
So there was a big bang, boom. And then from the chaotic situation came laws and order, and it just kind of put itself together. And the laws that are in place don't match with the beginning.
Well,
Which is insane.
The crazy thing is that these definitions keep evolving, right? So let me give you a practical definition of a physics definition of chaos. This is a modern. I just got this.
Okay.
Chaos. The formless matter supposed to have existed before the creation of the universe. Chaos. So
Say that again.
the formless matter supposed to have existed before the creation of the universe.
Creation of the universe.
Yeah, before, but it was the formless.
Got it.
So it's basically nothingness is chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thought, is that we would be getting better and stronger, and that's what evolution teaches. That's what naturalism teaches. You're getting bigger, faster, stronger. In some cases, maybe. In most cases, not. So just thinking from that standpoint to today, let's just talk about modern day. We've lost many cases because we're on the devices and we use our iPhones, and in many cases we've lost our natural or our primitive abilities to hunt, to skin, to fight. In many cases, you watch people, some people can't fight, right? We've lost many of what they would call primitive skills because we're now so advanced. But should all the advancement get shut down, right? Internet goes out, something goes out. Now you have to rely on primitive skills that you haven't developed in a very long time. So it's almost the opposite of evolution. You're supposed to be getting stronger in at least your primitive skills. In addition to that, you're getting better at additional skills. We're not doing that. We've actually lost our primitive skills in many ways. Should we have a need to go back, we'd be where we are. So I think that's... We talked last week. These guys were out. It was crazy. So these guys, after the podcast, they were outside talking about life, talking about all kinds of stuff till like midnight or something. It was like 10 o'clock, 11
It
o'clock.
wasn't like midnight.
Yeah,
Like
I got out. I put my baby to bed like at 10:30. It was like 11 o'clock when you guys bounced. So you guys were talking about something interesting about the conspiracy behind the chaos that we're seeing right now in the world. Yeah, isn't it Ordo Ab Kaio, right?
Ooh.
What they follow in the conspiracy realm type of scenario is chaos magic. And I have a quote from someone who founded chaos magic. For those who don't know or have yet to check out Conspiracies, one of our episodes behind. It talks about Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley is an influential person that even was involved in chaos magic. He was one of the founding members, I would say, of the magic that led to it, which was sigil magic, which his apprentice was Austin Osman Spare, who founded what is now known as chaos magic.
And through Aleister Crowley's teachings is what created the movements of the drug revolution, the sexual revolution, again, chaos. So keeping on that theme.
All right, so chaos magic is a primal form of practice that helps you change your circumstances so that you can throw off societal structures, achieve freedom, and strive to live according to a developing sense of personal responsibility. And that was quoted by Phil Hine in Condensed Chaos.
So what is it supposed to mean?
So in essence, I'll continue on something else he talked about, which was chaos magic. You've come to the realization that the world, the universe, and everything in it is merely a construct, and it's up to us to decide what to believe and what to discard. The world that you live in is not really the world. It's an illusion created by billions of people who perceive the world to be how it is. As a chaos magician, typically, they change their perception of the world, thus changing the world.
So
you purposely create chaos.
Or the chaos that's around you, you manipulate to fit your needs. So you can have a destruction of a war that's going on in the world. And for you, it's based on how you perceive that war going on. So you can have your good guys, your bad guys. You can have your gains from it. So they see it as energy. So they can feed off that and sell weapons, sell the news accordingly.
So capitalize on the opportunity.
So you'll see a lot of news stations. They'll have a short story about something that's going on, like immigrants, and then automatically what do they put? Like the special bulletin or the special news at 7, it's always something big that's happening, like to create fear or panic, chaos in essence, but it's so that they can have their own structure.
So they use it as an opportunity. They leverage an opportunity.
Exactly.
So chaos is real in that moment. They're leveraging an opportunity to expose it, but also to get their benefit from it.
Correct. Yes.
You said something about a shedding of self or something.
It's not really a shedding of self. It's finding yourself. So out of all the chaos you find your purpose. That's in essence.
But you need to almost maintain that chaos. Because if you lose it, you lose
so it's always
your opportunity.
It's always keeping a chaotic
Correct.
structure, so you have no order. So you'll have a chaos magician. A lot of chaos people that believe in chaos, they consider it like they're atheists. Or you'll have a lot of anarchists. So you'll have people that say, "Oh, we can run without a government. We don't need order. We'll just run and still establish our own laws, and everybody will respect each other."
right.
And then the purpose is to basically shed off the government or
Shed
what
off
you
anything,
think society is,
so that you
right?
can develop your own sense. So
Wow.
everyone has their own free will.
Right, but then
yet
everyone
there's no
has their
order.
own government, and really whoever has the biggest guns is the one who's really going to be the
Exactly,
government,
yes.
right? So that is just from chaos. You're going to create a different type of order. Now the order is going to be governed by the person who has the strongest power.
Which
What
then
ha-
comes to what
wow.
we were talking about before with Darwin when we had that episode. So then evolution. So if I'm stronger than you, I don't need you around anymore.
Wow.
That's what it teaches. So get rid of, in the Adolf Hitler standpoint, because that was a naturalistic standpoint. Let's get rid of everyone who doesn't have the intellect, who doesn't have the hair color, who doesn't believe in what we believe in. Let's rid them because we're the most powerful, most strong, and because we have the biggest army, we can go ahead and do that. So it's Nazi Germany all over again.
Wow.
And that's just the state that you see that a lot now in just random people that you talk to in the street. Even though they don't believe necessarily in chaos magic, it's now gone so perverted in our society and what we learn growing up that now we think like that. In essence, if you're not strictly into a religious belief or a worldview, a Christian worldview, that's what you believe. So you'll have someone automatically just say like, "Oh, the world's messed up," but yet I will live accordingly, or I would do and follow my career choice. I would do this, this, and that, and ignore what's going on.
Wow. Do you think order has like a definition? And if it does, what happens if we change that definition of order? You know?
I mean, yeah, order. I guess order really, and that's a really good point. Order has to have a reference point to what is the order. So it's like morality. Our society claims, and the world at large, the more internet is starting to merge cultures, and now the Bitcoin war to try to eliminate the regulations of money so we can create a more robust whatever is going on. To where's the reference point? That's why Bitcoin's having a lot of issues, because there's no backing. Like, what is the reference point? There's a lot of dollars in the people who have interest, but there's still no backing to where that money goes to. So the reason why our money can be a certain amount is because we have things that back the dollar. So if we're going to trade, that's why there's backing. So if I go to
But
you,
it's really backed though, the dollar.
right? But it's
another
the yeah, exactly. No, you're right. But the value has a backing of some kind. So there has to be something where if I go to you in the most primitive sense, I have a cup of beans. You want the beans. How much do you want the beans? Because you want the beans so bad, the value of these beans just went up for you and your family because you need them so bad for the health of your family. So now you're going to give me 40 sacks of corn for this can of beans. And so that's the trade. But the value of this is high because there's the demand. So that's the backing. So if we have a resource that people can look at and say, we want the gold, we want steel, we want oil, all these countries that have that backing, that financial backing, that's why their dollars or their currency is so high. But in the same way, there has to be a reference point. So I think in the same way, when we talk about morality has to have a reference point to hang its hat on. You can't just say, well, I'm moral. Okay, what makes you moral? Well, I don't curse. I I don't steal, I don't kill, so that makes me a good person.
Yeah.
Good person or moral as to what standard? There has to be a standard or a reference point. In this case, it would be a law giver or the commencement of a law. Where do you get that?
Yeah, kind of reminds me of like this story about a lamb. It sounds so funny, right?
Mary had a little lamb.
Mary had a little lamb. No, but but this lamb was basically all white, and the reference point of this was that all the other lambs would look at it and be like, "Man, your fleece is so white that it's blinding me." And then it began to snow, and everybody was like, "Originally, I thought it was white, but now
it's yellow.
Now you look yellow." And so it kind of shows like the reference point. What is the reference point of that? You know, of morality. What's the reference point of truth? What's the reference point of order?
You know, it makes me think of. I remember a conversation I was having with you. You mentioned something like, and it was coded or something where you said Jesus's perfection, his perfection made us kill him or something like that, right? You remember? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know exactly. So I actually heard this story from Ravi Zacharias.
Got it.
But basically, he's an apologetic. He defends the Christian faith, and a person posed a question to him and was like, "Hey, it was about good and evil and all stuff." But he basically just describes to this person. He says, "What would happen if a person was, free from imperfection, was absolutely perfect?" And the philosopher or whatever, it wasn't Ravi, he was just describing the story, and the philosopher said, "We would have no choice but to kill that person, because his mere perfection would bring to light your imperfection." And it kind of goes to show you, like, when Christ came, he was the moral standard. The Pharisees who thought they were completely in order were actually the ones in chaos. And God, who was supposedly in chaos, was the one in order.
Yeah, it's the story of Paul. We talked about it last time where, Paul was promoting this system and he thought he had it right. And when Jesus revealed himself to Paul, having killed Christians, having been giving orders to have Christians executed, he didn't eat for days because of the reality that his worldview was turned upside down. And in the midst of having this moment, this chaotic moment, emerged beauty, and that's kind of what you had referenced.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to show you: is all chaos bad? Chaos bad? I don't think so. I feel like for me, the times that I've grown the most is probably the times that are at my worst moment. I don't know about you guys, but
I mean, sometimes in that aspect, then you have, is religion in essence chaotic? Because then you have you're following these doctrines, you consider yourself good, you're doing all these teachings accordingly, but yet you might not really be having a relationship with Christ.
Wow. Is Jesus's words chaotic?
I mean, they were at the time for sure.
Yeah.
He turned the world upside down.
Yeah, he changed the society. He it was against the grain. So absolutely,
Countercultural.
He was absolutely countercultural. The issue though is, in the midst of that chaos, it came more chaos because they executed him in the most brutal manner possible. So when you look at it visually, the atheists can't grasp it. It says in Corinthians, it says that the cross is foolish for those who are not being saved, but to those who are being saved is glorious. And when we look at and we see this depiction that Jesus was executed for the sins of man, for humanity, who thinks that they're righteous. Because when Jesus came and he was talking to the Pharisees, he's like, look, I didn't come for the unrighteous. If you're good, keep being good, in quotes. But I came for those who are unrighteous. I came for those who are not good. I came for those who don't have it all together. And he died a death that was brutal, and it was the example of what love is, and love having to be displayed in a very in a very brutal, disgusting manner. But from that was absolute beauty.
So, in a sense, Friedrich Nietzsche, back to the quote, from chaos comes order. In some regards, yes, right?
In some respects, it does. I will have to agree with that. In the realm of creation, no.
Oof. Big difference, right?
It is different because you have specific laws, scientific laws in place that refute that, because the laws could not be in place if it wasn't for order to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make this clear. It's not a theory. We're talking about laws here.
We're talking about law.
We can't change this.
Yes, it's there. It's not changing. Wow. So in that regard, yes, those things. It's foolish to believe that you can have order after chaos because there are specific laws that make it contradictory. But when you're talking from the social aspect and you're talking about people growing in intellect, even evolving or reforming from an emotional standpoint, you're gonna have beauty that comes from chaos. You're absolutely gonna have that. And really the way from a psychology standpoint for people to change their worldview is to go through a very dramatic experience. Whether that means you are in a place where it was just overwhelmingly tragic and was very difficult to get out of, or you suffered a great deal, or you were enlightened by knowledge. You were enlightened by a new understanding, and it just took over you because you never saw it in that perspective, and the light bulb went on. Mm. And when that light bulb went on, then you changed. But for us to change, we have to go through some kind of event. It doesn't just happen. I can't just go up to you and say, it's going to rain tomorrow. If you were standing there and you check the weather and stuff, you had to have the information in order to say, you know what, my behavior from today is going to change to tomorrow because it's going to rain, so I'm going to change that. But it doesn't change the scope of how you live your life, right? To change your world view, it's how you view the world. And for that to take place, there has to be one of two things that happen, or both at the same time. And in Paul's example, that's what happened. He went through an insanely traumatic event in seeing Christ and came in contact with new knowledge that he didn't have before. And he's just like, everything that I believe, everything I did, just done. I was wrong. And Paul Washer, he talks about it. He's like, I was wrong about everything. Everything I thought I believed, I was absolutely wrong. And so that's why he couldn't eat. Couldn't eat for days because he just couldn't fathom, and his behavior just completely changed. And for us, that's how many of us came to Christ. Was this, not many of us, all of us came to Christ because of a radical transformation and an encounter with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. We all came, God rocked our worldview. He absolutely changed our perspective with new understanding, but also we endured circumstance where we saw we were sinners and we were enemies in comparison. In light of this holy God, we saw our position, we saw our status, and we couldn't measure up. That reality is what turned the light bulb on. And that's how people can come to Jesus. Those are the two ways. It doesn't come in the form of, beautiful things. Not any real believer that I know hasn't come to Christ in the midst of just beautiful events. If anything, they may have come to a knowledge of Jesus, but to really have a relationship with Jesus, you got to go through it.
I was homeless. I used to practice magic like crazy, and then boom, I became homeless. And even through that, it was people coming in, talking about conspiracy and stuff like that. And that's how I came to the realization, just going to church, talking to Mike, watching sermons and stuff like that. And then I was rocked. Mike even saw the demon that possessed me at the time, which was crazy enough.
Wow. Yeah. I remember that. And we actually have the full episode. I don't remember what number it is, but check out the episodes previous. It's on there. It's all about G. I think it's about magic. I think it's the episode on magic.
Occults.
Occults. There you go. Check out the episode on occults. and you will see witchcraft, all that. Go to all those episodes. Matter of fact, watch from episode 1 until episode tonight. All of that. Just do a binge. Forget Netflix. Do a binge of Poopy on Read. That's it.
That's a whole day. We got 24 episodes.
That's it. Do it the whole day. Skip work. Call out. You're getting
Create
fed.
chaos. In your life.
Create chaos in your life. Call in. No PTO. One boss.
Got fired. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the advice. Unemployment. Doing it. But is some of the chaos that we're seeing, is some of it a result of an agenda?
Of course. There's this weather manipulation machine called HARP that a lot of people like talking about, saying that, it's not true. It's not really going on. It's just by chance, or it's just nature in essence working out. So you have famous events happening where you'll see tsunamis in Japan. You see tsunamis hitting like California. You'll see the earthquakes in Haiti. And you can even talk about something recent that happened, which is like the fires in California. When yet you research some of it, and you'll see certain planes hitting at a certain level, and then these government lasers being tested at certain locations that they can fire exactly to one certain point. So you'll see in the maps of the fires of California during what was going on, some of the forests or some of the key houses of some important people at the time was just being destroyed, while other houses were being like left like blank, like it wasn't even being touched at the moment. But yet the fire, because it was so massive, would just consume the whole thing, because that's just what fire does. But it was the initial starting point of certain of the fires was something uncalled for, or something that you wouldn't even see by chance. Because you all know that if you just light up a match in a forest, it'll start out small, and then it'll just engulf everything around it.
Right. So some fire departments, they'll do controlled fires in order to burn off some of the dry, and then suddenly just like, oh my God,
Yeah, exactly. So it looked all controlled, but yet we're seeing it just because it's massive. So it's all chaotic, but we're not seeing the order to it all. And that's just the crazy things that we keep seeing. So we have, for example, the presidency right now, or politics in general, how it is now. Everyone freaks out, or everyone is like chaos. When the government was shutting down, it's like, oh, what's going to happen? But yet, look at us today. The government's still running just fine. We have the president, even though everything, I would say, is chaotic in its sense. We see a lot of people not how they were before, in the essence where they're coming united to talk about a lot of the issues that are going now. So they're trying to bring order back into it, but he was just introduced, I would say, in the conspiracy world. You could research it or see the things that they have planned, but he was introduced as an agent of chaos, just to breed about or bring about all this chaos, so that you have these racial tensions. You have a lot of people talking about things, but it's like I've mentioned before, where it's going to be like the days of Noah, where we have like hidden knowledge and things actually coming to the light.
So so you're saying that from the conspiracy standpoint, these things are supposed to be happening in order to do what?
It's supposed to, you can see there's 10 laws. I don't know all of them. I do know we talked about it before in the cults episode, but it's called the Georgia Guidestones. You can actually go to Georgia. I don't remember exactly the city, but you can go there. They clean it up every single day. It's about 7 languages. It covers every single
Somebody
tablet.
cleans them every day?
Every day, yes.
Wow, that's pretty orderly.
But it's basically laws that have to be implemented, or things that have to happen. So it's considered a new world order, or a perfect world. So you have depopulation. You have to have, instead of the chaotic, everyone speaks about in a different language, you have just one language. You have, I've mentioned this always, which is the Tower of Babel. So you had God use chaos in a sense, where he baffled everyone. So that they don't get united, but they weren't building a tower. They were just trying to ascend or become above God. That's what a lot of people don't understand. They just read the story and they're just like, oh, we were building an actual tower, but it wasn't the tower. It was people coming united as a one world government, as you see right here happening today with everything that's happening. And yet they were trying to ascend, or they're trying to play the God card. I don't know if you guys seen the robot that looks just like a human that they gave citizenship to.
No, I didn't. What?
There's a robot.
citizenship.
There's a robot now that has citizenship.
I mean, I know some people don't got no
Yo,
citizenship.
I know people that are fighting for the citizenship right now. Like, what's the deal with that?
We have a robot now, but it's because man is trying to be like God. So they're taking God completely out of the equation. So in essence, it falls back to the biblical worldview where it's sin became the introduction to chaos. You had order in the Garden of Eden, and then you had chaos when man decided to be or follow his own beliefs or his own laws, which is in essence what chaos magic is. You create your own reality out of everything that's going on. So you choose what your worldview is or what you're going to make up of your reality.
So all of the things that you're saying, as far as it's chaos that is purposefully created, potentially, right? We're talking conspiracy, right?
Yes.
And maybe there's a lot of evidence that can point in that direction. Some people who are listening might definitely say that's happening. Some people might say you're insane.
And that's why I broke it down in the episode Conspiracy, which was you have the conspiracy truths that you can actually prove, and then you have your conspiracy
Correct.
facts. So you can have your reptilian theories, your Atlantean theories, but yet you automatically always come to the conclusion that there's a group of people that you consider them the elites that are running certain aspects of the world.
And those things you can say true. And when we talked about that in depth in that episode, we said even companies have people that are in the inner circle who are making decisions on pay and benefits and so forth that the other people don't have any idea about, but they're making the decisions. Just like we can possibly say about people in power in the world standpoint, there is so much money out there that they're making specific decisions to their benefit, right? So they can sit in a room, they can mingle, and they can say, you know what, we want to go in this direction because we have so much money, we can do that.
I think it's so easy when you're one of those elitist people to want to create chaos, because when there is created chaos, they're usually not affected. So if there's famine, if there's war, if there's a lack of money or food, they always have enough. You know what I mean? So it's so easy. So it goes back to that survival of the fittest thing, or that mentality, because they would want to create it. They want less people on here. They want more power, right?
Or even as, like I usually always point out, is if you decide to create chaos, it just means you have a way to get out of chaos, or you have a way to solve the chaos so that you become the savior in the end.
Like it's calculated chaos.
Exactly.
It's not chaos for just being chaos.
Right. It's chaos to usher something in. There's an agenda that we want to usher in.
So something close by, which is something I continuously talk about with my friends, which is, this might touch a lot of people in sensitive areas, but you have 9/11. If it wasn't for 9/11, we would not have the security levels we have now in the United States. That's just plain as day. We would not be as big brothery as we were like 10, 20 years ago.
I mean, some people would say that's a good thing. Some people would be in agreement with it because of the heightened security and they feel safer. Some people would say, no, you're taking away our rights. So I guess it depends on the perspective of how you view it. But the fact remains, if not for this event, this wouldn't have happened. So in order to usher in, either intentionally or unintentionally, this is the result. So the people sitting at this table, the people listening, probably would never know the true intent, right? But even in any agendas that there are, you know, whether it's the confusion on racism, or the confusion on gender dysphoria, or the confusion of when does life begin, or the confusion of all of those things, there could be someone behind it who's benefiting from it financially. And you mentioned it before, where people are capitalizing on the chaos. So war, you capitalize on war. There's chaos.
You'll
you
see
build
a lot
weapons.
Of news stations capitalize a lot about that.
Correct.
So they'll put always the tragic thing that's happening in one area, and they'll put it as fake news, because sometimes they'll hire agents, so they'll hire actors sometimes as well. So it looks all chaotic. Everything's happening just to implement something else. So a lot of the things that go on is for gun control. For example, we have a lot of situations that's happened. We had the Pulse shooting close to home to us. And then you have automatically that same day, you'll have people shouting out, we need gun control. we need this and that, but it's always to regulate their own sense of order.
Right. So you use that to leverage your campaign. I've been campaigning for it for 10 years. It finally happened. Let me move forward. And so I wonder, in that same mindset, then, where do you go from there? So how do you respond? How do we respond as Christians in light of the scenarios that we see around us? What do you think?
What I always say is you always lean back to God. Regardless of anything that's going on, you always go read your Bible, make sure that even you can't let it consume you in a sense, because I know a lot of times I get into a lot of conspiracy talks, and a lot of people talk to me saying that, Gio, why are you doing this, and that? I don't let it consume me to that point, because you get lost in all that chaos itself. Instead of seeking or holding on to a firm foundation, you can easily lose yourself. You can easily go into depression. You can easily go into anxiety because you're always worrying about what's going to happen. Instead of having Jesus, coming to him, and just being at peace.
Yeah, I think it's down to the perspective that you have. Like, a lot of times, like, it's like your attitude towards something. So, like, the way that you receive the information, like, two people can go through something similar, but one person perceives it differently. So I feel like, when it comes down to chaos, sometimes chaos is the reason that you have the way that you think. You know what I mean? The reasons that the things that you have gone through is the person that you have become, And then on the other side of the spectrum, people internalize that differently and end up chaos has become the reason why they're either on drugs or on some other thing. You know what I mean? So I think when it comes down to it, you hit it on the nail on the head, is that you have to put God first, I believe. Like, you have to really, because he has to be the source, because chaos is always going to be there. It's a law. Like, it's always going to be in our lives. Maybe it's progressively getting worse, but
from a societal standpoint?
Yeah. From a culture standpoint, maybe it's getting worse. Maybe it's getting better in some regards. But if you put God in the center of your mind and your thinking, then no matter what you go through, you always know that this is all temporal. Even though this is so chaotic, our future kingdom is not chaotic. It's peaceful. So even though we struggle with temporary chaos, we have the hope of the future of the kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God.
Yep.
So it says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 14, it says, I'll read from verse 13. Until we all obtain the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children tossed to and fro by the waves and carried by every wind of doctrine, or in some translations says philosophy, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, for whom the body joined is held together by every joint with which it is equipped. When each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. So it's this view of order. For us to operate, for us to progress, it has to be into an orderly fashion, but we must navigate through the chaos. We can't get caught up and getting tossed around by every wind of philosophy, all these doctrines that come up, and deceitfulness. I remember, even getting hung up on some of the conspiracies, or even some of the things that we were getting caught up in. You start to just become very, you just, I don't know. Yeah, you just don't know how to respond to the world.
You become numb after a while.
Because that's all you see. You see everything is, we remember breaking down music videos, and we were breaking down movies, and we just be like, man, I can't watch TV. I can't listen to nothing on the radio. I can't do this. I can't do that. And you just like, everything is evil. Yes. That's the point. Yes, everything is chaotic. Everything has made themselves enemies of God. And God, through Christ, is submitting all things to himself. He's bringing everything back into surrender to himself, so that at every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord, they'll do it one of two ways. They'll do it voluntarily because they fell in love with Christ, or it's the iron rod. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, here it is. And so, our goal and our mission is to be people that are so in line with the gospel, so in line with the word of God, that when we come in contact with things that we understand and we realize that they are intentionally deceitful to create chaotic situations in our lives, so that we can neglect God and start to respond to our own desires, so that we can become our own God. We build our own Tower of Babel. We lift ourselves up. We can't have that. That's not God's will for our life. He does promise suffering. You're going to suffer. The apostles were not devoid of suffering. In fact, there was chaos in order for us to say there are X number of millions of Christians around the world. Because if it wasn't for that suffering, if it wasn't for the bloodshed, I forgot who it was that said it. I don't know if it was Tertullian or someone that's, there has never been an entry of a Christianity into an unreached people group without bloodshed. Mm-hmm. That's just what it is. So there has to be moments of suffering. There has to be moments of chaos for there to be a new change or a progression in the thoughts and the lives of people. And sometimes you go from a population that is totally on fire for Jesus, and then you go in that same population and they're just totally not on fire for Jesus. And we see that in Scripture. Some of the areas, some of the towns, like Turkey, countries that where it was rampant Christianity at one point, or that it got consumed by the thoughts and the ideas of the world. They fell off, and now that place is a desert when it comes to having a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, I heard statistic. It said, I think in Iran it was 1.5 million Christians, and then I think that was about 10 or 15 years ago, and then maybe 5 years ago when the statistic took place, that's about 150,000. So look at that drastic. I mean, was that 90% or something? I don't know.
And we don't know even the reason behind the stat.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know the reason, but it's kind of showing you where the times are going. It's showing you,
we make our own way, that's the point. Is until we get to the place where we can have that deep relationship with our Maker, the one who created us, the one who sets the standards. Until we can go back to that place, we will always live in chaos. Like, that is our future. It's one thing to go through chaotic moments and emerge from there. It's another thing to live in constant chaos and confusion and allowing the winds and the waves of the world to just overtake us because we have no sound doctrine. We have no sound understanding. We don't have a true worldview. We haven't identified who we belong to or what our value is in life. We haven't done it, nor do we have the capacity to do it. It's all us surrendering to Christ, that He would show us, that He would give us the truth that we need, because I think you have mentioned the end times, that knowledge will increase, but truth will be suppressed.
Yeah, so in the Revelation, it talks about that. It talks about in the end, when Jesus returns, that there will be ever increasing knowledge, but unable to grasp what truth is. So I feel like that's where we live in right now. We live in a time where, we're smarter than ever. We have the internet, we have Google. If you think back 25 years ago, I was fortunate to have an encyclopedia in my house, and I was one of the few, and that was how I got information. But now you see information just at the fingertips. Mm-hmm. You see information literally in your fingertips with the phone, So if you ever have a question, you always just go to Google. But what's happening is, even when I was doing research on the law of thermodynamics, was that it wasn't quite the definitions that my science teacher had, and I had to look for it, and it was the true definition, but it seems like things are changing. Like, whatever the definition is, if you don't have it in print, it's kind of like that Orson Welles' book, 1984. Yeah, there was a burning of the books, right? It was kind of like a prelude of what a society is when it's controlled, right? And it's funny that it's a burning of the books, but not burning of the computers, because the burning of the books is printed copies. It's something that was probably more verifiable than something on Wikipedia that someone can edit. You know what I mean? And
in seconds.
that's the society we live in. We are smarter than ever, but yet we are more dumb than ever.
And I think it was man, I forgot where the quote came from. Forgive me for not knowing the quote, but it's like technology has ushered in or brought about improved means for us to obtain more damnable ends. So the fact that we have more access to technology and more access to information, we can embrace the truth. We've gone so far into it that even the knowledge that we have or that we think we have, we don't even apply it in the right way. It's just facts. It's just material. And we move on to the next thing right after. There's no meditating on it. There's no thought. There's no dialogue. Yeah. It's just, oh, this is what it says, and then we're bored. And it's just strange in that way because it causes for us to, how do we respond to that?
I was actually speaking to my wife like maybe last week, and I heard this from somewhere, and so I gave her a story. I told her there was two guys. Both of them are up for a job interview. The first guy, the boss likes both of them, right? But the first guy, he the last question that he gives to the guy that's getting the interview is saying, how tall is the building that we're currently at? And so the guy that's getting interviewed is like, well, I looked on your website. This building is approximately 654 feet. And so the guy's like, wow, that's fantastic. Okay, have a good day. The next interview, the guy that was getting interviewed, he the interviewer asks him the same last question, and he says, how tall is this building? And the guy being interviewed says, I don't quite know, but if you give me a moment, I'll be right back. So he goes outside, he measures, he sees the shadow of the building. He measures the shadow, and then he comes up with some calculations, and of course he uses his calculator. He's not that crazy, but he goes back up.
Say, like, it's taking 45 minutes for the interview.
Yeah. Hey, I'm back with the abacus. No, but he comes back and he says, based on some calculations, it's around 650 feet, based on the shadow of what I saw. And so he goes, thank you very much. And
so you hire that dude on the spot. Like, what are they doing?
The reality is, I asked my wife, which person would you hire? And she said, the first one. And I asked her, why? And she said, because he got the right answer. And I told her, I said, we had a conversation for about an hour after. I said, well, you hired the wrong person because the manager is the one that can think. See, the first person had the right answer, but he regurgitated the answer. He was unable to process the information, but the manager was the one that
comes up with the solution.
Solution. And she was like, whoa, that's crazy. So we were both blown away.
No, that's fine, because if you think about it, a lot of the things that I read in the beginning when I talked about human trafficking and the drugs and STDs and all this stuff, much of the perspective of why we go about wanting to pursue and indulge in our sin is because of today's influence. Not saying that in the time periods past this wasn't true, right? The time periods past, there was rampant of a lot of things. But there was also the influence of a certain group of people. That's why you respond to it. You're responding to a group of people approving of your sin. You have a desire in your heart. There's sinful desires that you want to carry out, and there's people in front of you that are in higher positions that are approving your desires, hence you carry them out. We see that now, where media is our higher power. Media is the one pushing it. So if you have a name, if you have a reputation, if you have some letters after your name, PhD, or you're Senator so-and-so, or you're CEO of whatever corporation, suddenly that person has given you approval to engage in the sinful desires of your heart. So if that person did it, why not? I had a friend, we were talking yesterday, and, you know, I said a word that I won't say here, right? It was a choice word that, you know, I don't necessarily see it as a curse word. He didn't feel like it's not a curse word to him, but he wouldn't think I would say that word, and I'm not going to say the word.
Shenanigans.
Yeah, right. It's not that serious, right? But I won't say it because based on his response, I thought, okay, maybe other people are going to feel like it's offensive. So I said the word. He was like, Mike, I didn't realize you say words like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, and by me saying that, yo, he just started cursing. He just went off.
Wow.
Yo, he just was like, yo, you've given me. So he said, I see you in a certain way. Like I see you in a certain platform. And the fact that you said that, like you just gave me approval. And he just went, and that's all the dialogue was just him doing, you know, and that's what makes it interesting is that in this case, what we're talking about now is the behaviors that we're seeing that I listed off earlier. A lot of those behaviors are in response to people saying it's okay. Go ahead and carry out all of your sinful desires. Yeah. Go ahead. We have an agenda we want to carry out. We want you to be confused by your gender. We want you to be confused by the truth behind the use of sexuality. We want you to be confused as to the relationship, the marriage relationship. We want you to be confused in these areas because we have an agenda we want to push. So we have the dollars that we're pushing behind our campaign. You're absorbing it because you cannot think for yourself. And since you cannot think for yourself and you're relying on the device, you rely on the service, got you. You're going to behave in the way we want you to behave.
It becomes groupthink. It's
100% groupthink. The marketing phenomenon, groupthink. Everybody's around the table and everyone is in agreement at all times. They all nod their head and they move forward.
And the moment you disagree is the moment where, why are you hating me?
Yes.
Or what is your problem?
There's conflict. So organizations now are trying to promote healthy conflict to say, hey, this is our way to advance ourselves, but you still have back channeling. You still have people that don't like them because they disagree with their idea. That's the same thing today. You see that same thing today. You have Democrats and you have Republicans and you have those who believe in socialism, those who believe in capitalism. You have those who are pro-life and those are pro-choice. And you have these people that they can't sit at a table. They hate each other so bad. It's not chaos that leads to beauty. It's the chaos that leads to separation. It's chaos that leads to further chaos. But ultimately, at some point, you're going to have to sit at the table. You're going to have to talk things out. You're going to have to figure things out. There's going to have to be some kind of agreement. And at that point, you might come to a consensus where, well, the things that we had done before or the things that we had believed before probably were the right things, or, man, we were both wrong from the get.
Or we agree to disagree.
Potentially, but that it actually is counter to what the culture at large is trying to promote. They're trying to promote a utopian system. So we can agree to disagree, but how do we move forward? That's the key. How do we go?
There has to be one defining agreement.
There has to be. There's always going to be. So you have to make a choice.
In this new system, you cannot agree to disagree. There has to be unity.
You can say that. You can say we can agree to disagree and we can have a sandwich after today. But the reality is, for us to move forward, we have to have some kind of consensus. So you have to compromise.
So what would happen?
Or you have to compromise.
What would happen if I'm immovable in my beliefs?
Then somebody has to move.
You get removed.
Somebody has to move.
That's the essence.
Somebody has to move. So whoever has the greatest influence, whoever has the deepest pockets, you're going to move.
How?
They're going to make you move. Somebody's going to make you move.
Oh, that's kind of strong.
Somebody's going to make you move.
That's what we see in Revelation.
they're gonna bring a forklift and cut you out your bed.
So they wanted to take my gun so I can't protect. Oh, okay, I got it.
They're gonna barge in.
Oh, I
take your gun. At some point.
I mean, you see that in a lot of those. I forget the actor's name, but the guy that throws out those Rapture movies. Where
Cameron? Not James Cameron.
Something Cameron.
Kirk Cameron.
Is it
James Cameron, Kirk Cameron?
That's James Cameron, Titanic.
That's two financial differences.
Well, it's one of those, but you see that where you have all this going on with the Antichrist, everyone's united. and then you have just that one Christian guy that just stands up and he's just talking about like, oh, we have to go back to Jesus, but yet he gets removed or hanged or something like that. That's what it will come to in the end.
My bad. I'm laughing because I'm thinking if James Cameron had directed those movies, they would have been way better. And then
There would be a T-3000 or an Alien or something like that.
way better production.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, that's what happened in times past. Even Christianity is guilty, or those that claimed Christianity. We have to be careful where, the representatives of Christianity at that time that said they were Christian, that didn't adhere to biblical truths or the example of Christ, then you can really call into question whether it was Christianity when they would force certain behaviors. So the behaviors that they would want to impose was that they just killed witches, or they killed Muslims in response to saying you have to come to Christ, and if you don't, we chop your head off. That's God. That's not the way. Like, God didn't put a gun to our head for that to happen. If you read Scripture, Jesus clearly says, if you think you're good, then keep being good. I'm coming for those who are broken. So there's a response factor. It's not, I cut your head off if you don't come to Jesus. That's actually opposite of what the gospel is. Like, you're not in a place where, from a humanistic standpoint, from the human perspective, we're not called to go out and cut people's heads off and hang people so that we can make them examples so everyone can be scared enough to come to Jesus. God's in charge of putting that fear in your heart to say, there's separation from me. Do you realize what that means? Do you realize what that looks like? You're an enemy of mine, and there's an eternity that is separate from me. Do you realize what that is? Do you know who I am? Being in awe of who he is and what the consequences are of that separation. And then this is the solution. We provide you the solution in Christ. And so it's different. But in that same respect, it could be, it's a religious system that got it wrong, forcing people for certain behaviors that, they want people to move in that direction. So I don't know. I think overall the topic is a tough one because there's so much to it. But the essence of what we're trying to cover today is that Christ is supreme. And in spite of anything that you're experiencing right now, in spite of any of the things that we talked about, whether you are addicted to drugs, maybe you've made poor decisions with your sexuality, maybe you're confused with your gender, you're confused about life as a whole, you have some moral framework, but you don't really know where that's coming from. Maybe you're at war with people in your family because of differences in politics or anything else. Get rooted in Christ. Get rooted in the truth of Scripture, the timeless truth of Scripture. And the fact that in him, in Jesus, there is no classes. There are no economic divisions. There are no political divisions. Christianity is the only religion where you don't get in because you're part of a certain group. You're in because of Jesus. And that's it. There is no, wise or unwise. There is no, this is it. There's Christ, and then there's everybody else. And we are all fall short of God's glory. And so, I think just having that understanding and being able to reflect on all that you are in light of all that he is, and realizing that he is enough for all circumstances. And so get in your word, get into a church that is gospel-centered. Hit us up if you have any questions, proofbeyondreason@gmail.com, or our Facebook page, our Instagram that G just put up not too long ago. Get at us. We definitely would love to even chop it up with you, pray with you. We'll be praying for you that, the chaos that's going on in your life, there is beauty at the end of it. There is hope, and that hope is Jesus. So we love you. We're out. Again, check out our boy Soja I Am. It's sojaiam.com. He has really good content, really good concert presence. He has really good music, so check him out. He's always putting out new things. SoldierIam.com, and check out Geology with his book. Definitely, if you want a copy, send us a message, and he will send you a link to the publisher so that you can purchase the book. And that's it. Just signing out. Mike the Baptist.
Geology, J-Mo.
Yeah. Love y'all.